In this video we're going to look at how to sketch the reciprocal function, which are graphs in the form of y equals a over x. Now normally when we want to sketch functions we've looked at finding the value of y when x is 0 and the value of x when y is 0, which gives us our intercepts with the axes, and that gives us the focal points for our sketch. It won't work with the reciprocal function because when x is equal to 0, y equals to 1 over 0, and that is not something we are able to compute. So what we can do is we can consider what happens when x gets very, very large and what happens when x gets very, very small, and the same we can consider with y if we need to. So if we think about x, if we divide 1 by a very, very large number, we're going to get a very, very small result, and the larger x is, the smaller y is. So the further along the x-axis we go, the closer to the y-axis we get. And conversely, if we look at dividing by a value of x which is very, very small, then 1 over x would become very, very large. For instance, if x was 1,000th, then 1 over x would become 1,000, so very large. Now when we try and graph that, that gives us a graph of this shape. Should be slightly more symmetrical than that, but it will not touch either of the two axes, and we call them the asymptotes of the curve. So it will approach it but never quite reach. And if we have a value where x is negative, then y will be negative, and we get the same shape but in the two negative quadrants. We have a very similar situation here with y equals negative 1 over x, so only graphs in this form, except that if one of the coordinates is positive, the other will be negative. So we're going to get the same kind of graph, so we're going to get asymptotes, but it's going to appear in the other two quadrants. And again, we've got no intersections with the axes. And this third example we're going to look at, again, is very similar, but this time we have it in the form 3 over x. So I've got my axes, and this has the same general pattern again. The only difference is it's going to be slightly further away from the axes. Over time it's still going to get very, very close to the axis, but close to the origin it starts off a little further away, but that will depend on our scale.